Morning. This is Matthew Andrus of Perforce Blazemeter, and I wanted to come in and make a little recording of what the JMeter correlation recorder looks like to create a script. What I've done here is I have an application that I log into. I've created a proxy server here in the Blazemeter. It is the Blazemeter correlation recorder inside of JMeter. So we just create a local proxy at port 8888. I go into my system settings. I direct all my network traffic to go through my local IP address, port 8888. And then anything that I do will come into this certainly once I'm recording. So before I did all that, I created a couple of variables that I want to capture when we do these recordings. Most notably and familiar to people would probably be a session ID. There's a couple ways to do it, and the online videos, they like to do it out of the body, but I like to do it out of the headers. So I'm creating a variable called JSession. We are searching for JSession ID terminated by a semicolon. And we have the ability to replace that with something, but that's not what we're going to do today. We're just going to define that we need to capture the JSession ID along with username and password, which it would probably make sense is something that you not only want to capture to be able to replay the first time, but also have variables that we can replace with data later on to log in with different usernames and passwords. The way that we go about this is to start with a fresh new test plan, to add the correlation recorder, to configure all of this to the best of our knowledge, and then come in and click record. We go out to the application and record it, and then click stop. And what this does is it populates all of the information into the thread group that you define. So here that is this thread group. And if I minimize these, you can see that it would just look like a normal thread group of a recording from external or something you would create manually, correct? And these steps were all captured just by clicking that start record, going to my browser. So these, I told it to label the steps with a digital bank and then an identifier. What I've also done is I've added a view results tree so you can see what happens when I play this back. So in short, you can see that this script does play back without any correlation errors or having any problems. But something else I like to do is troubleshooting is I like to take one of those variables that we've captured and I like to print it out as part of the execution so that we can see whether it's working, whether the variable capture is working properly every time we run it and if it's changing. So we can see that in the tree over here. First I used the wrong parentheses, but then when I did it correctly, here is that identifier. And so ideally what we want to see is every time we run it, we want to see that identifier change because it's a new dynamic run. So I'm going to go ahead and clear this history and rerun this. If you don't know the difference between these two buttons, the regular play button will play back the think time that it experienced during the recording, and this button will do it with ignoring think time. So here we go. And we have created a new session, and it has executed, and we can see here that there's the session ID has been printed out as part of the name. And I'm just going to go ahead and run it again. And we'll see that we have a new session ID. So that's something that's being captured dynamically each time. And now that I've showed you, hey, this is what I tell you it works and does, I'm going to show you a little bit behind the scenes what is happening. So you'll see not all of these have anything about the JSession in it. So I'm going to show you the ones that do. When we come in and in our initial login is when we first get our session ID. So what has happened is the correlation recorder, when this came in, because we had JSession ID identified, it's basically saying when something comes in with that matches this JSession ID, figure out what to do with it and insert into the script what we need to do to deal with it. So when the first one came in, it captured that JSession ID and it set the cookie. So now locally on the client side, we have a cookie being defined and that can be retained and utilized in all subsequent requests, just like any browser would. We have the correlation recorder has gone ahead and set this JSession ID for us as a cookie that can be permanent through the test run and reset on later iterations. Then you'll see down here that we have a new regex defined to capture again. We don't need to set a cookie, but the correlation recorder has determined that since we saw it in the header here, we're going to capture it, but it didn't need to set a cookie. So then all these requests are capitalizing on the fact that this has been done, captured for us automatically and asserted properly in this iteration. And then we get down to the end and we see that we have a new cookie happening. So the fact that the correlation recorder has been set for all incoming traffic, when it saw an opportunity here, it sets the cookie again. Now this is at the very end. We're actually logging out. And so that's why we get a new session ID, because it's no longer the one where we were logged in and then we end. So these regular expressions and cookies are what get inserted into the script automatically because of the correlation recorder. And the way that we can see that is by coming in and running it over and over and see that it's not ever failing. And that we are getting a new session ID every time we run it, which is what we want from a script like this. So that's the high-level overview. There are a few more steps of getting to know the correlation recorder itself and mastering, how to use the regex and how to find different criteria in scripts, and we'll get into that a little later. But at a high level, this is how easy it is to take something that has context and correlation that needs to be done, and this is how Blazemeter has given the power to have that correlation happen as much as possible automatically in a tool that you have control of, the JMeter IDE. So if you guys have any questions, please let us know and we'll work on getting to the next step with you. Have a great day.